Welcome back to the second presentation of the second year seminar. Today I will be doing the who makes the rules, and the topic that I was assigned was collegiate football. So we look first at who governs the collegiate football. Being a college athlete, it's very well known to me to be able to see that the NCAA, you got to go through them for everything. The NCAA has a concussion safety protocol, which I attached a link to right here, that athletes must follow in order to return to play. What have you been able to find from that governing body regarding who was included on creating the policy? And then we see the NCAA's CCSMA is in charge of reviewing everything. And we look at the next slide, we see that the Concussion Safety Advisory Group are the people who kind of go in every year and they look at if anything needs to be modified. They will put it in there for the protocols itself. Pretty straightforward there with seeing how the protocol lines up. There's a very wide list you got to do, such as like a balance test. You got to see if you have any symptoms for 24 hours. That's kind of where they cut you off at this point. But the NCAA does a good job at following this protocol correctly. So how do we identify a concussion? Obviously, the main concern is you have a head-to-head collision, say in collegiate football, and what happens is you got to say you got a headache, brightness is not your friend at that point, your eyes start to hurt a little bit. You also see how symptoms right here, to get to the extreme of consciousness, seizure, tonic posture, and confusion's a big one too that happens like right away when, say, someone gets a head-to-head collision in football. They don't really like right away. It's like very confusing, like what just happened, especially when a concussion occurs. So who can diagnose a concussion? This is a big one, just because when we see the concussion, you can't just have some random person say, oh, you have a concussion. We have the medical staff at Bridgewater State. These people in the trainer's room over there can identify who has the concussion, and we also looked at, they're the ones who can also determine when you return to play. They're very strict on stuff just because they obviously want the safety of the athletes throughout the school. So they're the ones who dictate who has a concussion, what you need to go through to get reevaluated to return to play. So what are the procedures regarding patients' ability to return to play? The evaluation is step by step. The athletes must follow to clear the concussion. We look for this whole list came straight from the concussion protocol. Immediate assessment, neurological screen for red flags, basically saying if your brain is showing signs of a concussion, you are not allowed to return for another 24 hours once that occurs. A multi-model evaluation is clinically indicated, which may include clinical assessment for cervical spine trauma, obviously showing the spine is a big part of your body, which means that you got to make sure that you have like no nerve damage from the head injury that just occurred. That's a big one. The symptom assessment, obviously seeing if you still have a headache, confusion, not very particularly good with the light just yet. Obviously you're working towards getting better, so it's still going to be a determining factor. The balance exam is huge. Obviously when you sit there and you have a concussion, you can be a little lightheaded, a little off balance, just because, your head is still recovering from the injury itself. What are the conflicts that follow in this? So we see that the medical staff's got a lot on them. You're playing football, you got a big game this weekend, and your best player is out with a concussion. Do you A, you do the right thing and make sure that the athlete is completely healthy and ready to go. No conflicts of dealing with a worse injury that could occur. Or B, could a coach kind of ride you out a little bit and say, no, we need our best player back. I need you to sign him off, even if he's not cleared or not. So that falls on the pressure of the medical staff. Obviously, they do a great job with that stuff. But I think a conflict could be also, too, the medical staff going at some schools. This isn't just everybody, but looking at the idea of, the medical staff sees that, their best player, they need a win this weekend. He's on the sidelines. It could be any player that, they need for the weekend, any game. They could potentially lead to bringing them back in an earlier situation, which is not okay. All concussion protocols by the NCAA is preferred to be 100% before returning to the field of play. The easy access here. All the information that I found was right on ncaa.org for me. I found the concussion safety protocol, the management of the protocol, and I also found an article saying return to play after a sports concussion, complete concussions. So basically that article was very good for me because it showed me that what athletes need to do, and then the NCAA itself is the checklist that you have to follow through. It's not really like very difficult to read through that checklist, see what you need. Obviously, it states that medical attention, people in the medical field, the trainers, they need to be aware of what's going on at all times. They need to be in the view, which is a good thing. Like, obviously, like, you won't see the injuries get worse, but more so you would see the athletes get the attention that they need. So the standout information to me is that the NCAA does a great job in being able to fight off the concussions correctly for athletes, so they don't really have to worry about, not going back too early, having long-term symptoms like we've seen in the past few weeks in this class with all these NFL players who just continuously get head-to-head collisions. And I think the negative that I could take from this is the medical team part again. I'm not saying this is for any particular school at all, but there could be medical staff in this field who can sign off an athlete to return to the field, and they let them go too early. They didn't evaluate everything correctly. But overall, I think they do a great job in being able to move forward and let the athletes return to 100% beforehand. But that's just something that stuck out to me a little bit. And in conclusion, this overall presentation of collegiate football made me learn a lot about, head injuries, the severity of it, the protocols that needs to be addressed while going through. Obviously, football is a big sport where you can see that head-to-heads are very frequently, especially on people on the offensive and defensive line who take a big hits every week. This is why kind of we see that football only plays 1 day a week, just because they need that week to kind of recover because they get beat up so much in that one game that they play every single week. So overall, I think that this presentation was very knowledgeable to me. Being able to learn that more about the concussion protocols. Obviously, the concussion protocol checklist is what's very important in this aspect, just because if you can't cross off all those boxes, then you got to wait until you can, because you can't return to the field until then. So thank you guys. This was my collegiate presentation for the second year seminar.